In order to show you how Nexio is working, I will actually use one of the tools provided with the SDK of Nexio, which we call the Toolkit, which enables to submit, create job ticket, and see which information you can actually use out of it. Now, you have some mandatory fields in the JDF file and some additional fields. The Toolkit will actually be able to fill the majority of those. Of course, it's a toolkit, so that means you can put other informations inside in a different way. It's just there to explain you how a job ticket is built, what has to be submitted, in which form, and lets you actually test your own JDF files. So, mandatory field, a job ID. This is a unique ID for each and single job ticket for the whole life of the Caldera Nexio installation. Only one unique ID per job can exist. It will refuse to receive a new job with the same ID. That will actually let you track in a unique instance each and single submitted JDF. So I will give it a simple number. You can enter a job name, my demo job, a job comment, my job comment, an order number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A customer name, my customer name. A number of copies, let's say 3. A device that you want to send the job to, which is not even mandatory. The job could be simply imported in the RIP with these information field, but without a predefined printer. Now, as you can see here, that pop-up menu contains a list of devices and a list of preset, which are actually automatically retrieved by this web page, which is of course possible over JDF and JMF from the RIP. That means these are the same devices that are installed here, and obviously the list of presets are matching the ones that I can see in the toolkit. A JDF gang name, which we might see later, which is a way to group jobs together, and a file that I want to print. So I'm going to take Flameboy and submit that job tickets. Now what happens, you see here the already submitted job tickets. So you can click on one and you will get some informations back. Now you see here, has the file been printed? That means that there is no feedback job ticket yet available. You will see this is my order number that I entered, which came in, which actually has my Flameboy, which has been tagged, and the whole tab has been put in green. That means that the job has been completed and physically printed. If I click again on my job, I will now get the feedback information that I can use out of the response JDF, so the replied ticket from the RIP giving you the status of the job. You will find, well, basically the information you can find in the spooler of Caldera, the number of printed copies, which is the file node, the effective status, the duration, the media consumption, the ink consumption, and so on. Now, where it gets very interesting is that a job ticket actually describes the life of a job. So this file that is actually in my RIP, that has been already done, let's suppose I want to print it again. Now, since the file has been tagged with meta information that describe which printer and so on, I can simply click enter and it will open the proper printer with the proper presets and the pre-filled number of copies, etc. Now let's say I will actually send 4 more copies. I will submit it to print. Once it's done, I will actually click again on my job in the toolkit and I will see that there was a request for 3 copies and 7 in total have been printed in 2 steps. Print number 1, print number 2. Now all these information are actually sent in the job ticket. This web page is simply using and displaying them. Now if we look a little bit on how the job ticket looks like, this is the submitted JDF, so the effective job ticket. If I click in the simulator, I will be able to see what it's made of. It's an XML-based structure. which has predefined schema and fields. You will find back the job comment, the device I send it to, the file I actually want to print. This is the major difference between JDF and the simple hot folders. You're not dropping a file, you're dropping a job ticket that actually defines which file to be printed. A JDF can of course contain multiple files with multiple number of copies as well, and the desired number of copies. You will also find some additional information which are pre-filled by the toolkit. So an order number, customer information, customer name, customer email, and so on. Now, if I open my job tracker, which I mentioned before, that is a view of the jobs that have been sent to Nexio. So I will find back again my demo job, 7 copies printed, 3 requested. And I will find here my information, my customer name, the info, the email of the customer, the order number, the printer to submit the job to, the job comment, and so on. These informations actually can be used for simple sorting, as you can see here. I will show you. You can define which one of these information should be used for a tab. It can also be used to annotate a job, for instance. If I return to my printer, since version 10, there is an ability to add QR codes within the print, right? If I edit that QR code, I can make a right click and select some of the fields that are actually available or can be submitted in a JDF and encode these in the QR code itself. You can also use them as simple informations underneath the print if you enable the free text. You can also add it as free text underneath. Now, what information is actually sent back? We just saw the submitting job ticket. So this is the one that has to be created by the submitting system. The output JDF is what the RIP will submit back or reply, if you want, as soon as an action happens on the job. It means it's printed again, it failed, anything like this. You will find again the submitted part. You will have a preview also available, either over HTTP or a file access. So that is the same preview you have in the spooler. And you will find one or several resource audits. So these are the effective actions that have been taken on the file. If you remember, that file has been printed 2 times. So what I will find are 2 resource audits with a different timestamp and different information. Maybe different consumption, different number of printed copies, different barcode for the cutting, and so on. Now, Nexio only provides these information, obviously. And as you can see, the toolkit shows it in a certain way, but the overall goal or idea is to submit this back to an MIS that will actually analyze, track a job, verify if it succeeded, if it failed, compare it to the submitted number of copies, and do analytical informations with it. Nexio will actually only get job tickets, execute what the job ticket defines, and reply back in a new JDF or a new job ticket what happened with the job. But it really doesn't use the information. Now, there are, of course, quite a lot of cases, especially when you want to analyze the data. For instance, if you start to nest jobs together, you will have multiple job tickets coming back, one for each and single submitted job, and relevant information concerning the nesting, which job have been nested together, which job haven't been nested together, how many copies of that job is in that nest, and so on and so on. This is all available in an SDK, and of course the help of the solution integration team is also there to help you understand what you can do with these data. And how you can actually use the information in an effective way. Now, If I am submitting a new job again, as you can see here, I can submit it to another quickset, which will actually help me to define which one of the print modes I want to use. You have two ways to submit this. The job ticket itself can simply contain the complete print mode. That means the whole description of the print mode. These ones can be exported within the RIP. Okay, these several elements can be exported as an XML file and simply embedded within the job ticket. Or you can simply reference them and say, I want to send it to a nest configuration. Now, if I'm actually defining a new number, I send it to nest, I'll take a different file, and I will submit it. It's still the same order number because I didn't change it, so the job will actually open here in the RIP in the same tab. That tab can be defined in the Nexio configuration, which I will show you. Now this job is now sent in nesting. If I open my printer and check in the spooler, you will see that 3 copies are sent to be nested together. Now there are 2 main ways of submitting files to Nexio, either over files, over hot folders if you will. This is what the simulator is doing, but the files or the job ticket themselves as well can be submitted over HTTP to a web service that actually is running in Nexio. So if we look in the configuration of Nexio, which is actually here, I have only one. Okay? Now that configuration includes several things. Obviously a name of a configuration. You can have multiple input Nexio queues. Again, here you can choose which tab should be created based on which one of the JDF meta information. You can send it to a configuration based on the device name, which is submitted by the toolkit. You can also hold incoming jobs or simply return the status automatically or not. The idea of the difference would be that sometimes you need automation, but you still want some kind of control. As you saw here, as soon as I submitted the job ticket, it kicked in the job tracker, got automatically imported and sent to an automation task. My automation task is defined again in Nexio. Here you can see it's sent to JDF, which is simply a workflow that I have defined that triggers the fact that the job should be printed. Now that workflow is a little different from standard ones in Caldera in the way that there's a little text box here called Allow Printer Override from Nexio. That means that on the contrary of a fixed workflow where all the settings are defined within, in this case everything comes from the JDF. So not only the printer, but the print mode, the number of copies and so on are directly triggered by the content of the JDF file. So it's a kind of a fake workflow, if you will. Now, if for instance I would disable this, so not send it to any printing, the only thing that will happen is that next submitted jobs will simply stay in the image bar, but won't be processed. So Nexio is restarting. I will send a new job to normal. I will take that one, send. The file will be imported. It's here and nothing else happens. If I look in the job tracker, the file is there in blue, in progress, 0 copies of 3 done. Now again, I can simply click on the file, press enter. It will open the proper device defined in my job ticket, which is not even mandatory. You can send it to another printer if you want. If I now print that file, as soon as it's finished, that means at least the number of required initial copies is performed, the job will get tagged automatically. It will appear as finished in the job tracker. And obviously, if I look in my simulator, the reply JDF has been generated and sent to the submitting system. Now, the whole idea is, of course, on the contrary of a manual hot folder and workflow mechanism as well, is to get a real-time feedback. So the supply JDF will be published in a folder, which is specified in the submission, or actually sent to an HTTP address, supplied at the submission level as well, so that the system that needs to be informed will be informed real-time of what happens on the job, which status of job changed, which one has been printed, and so on. Now, one thing is to be kept in mind as well. The return of information, for instance, the ink consumption or the effective status of a job, depends on the ability of Caldera to retrieve these information. As said, Nexio doesn't do more than actually automate the way you can submit and retrieve information as the RIP would do. So if you have a device where cost proof, for instance, is not supported by the RIP, Nexio will not be able to send you back the cost information either. I hope this demo has clarified some point on the way this is working, and feel free to contact the solution integration team if you need further information.